Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mack Story.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. Today, I'm happy to introduce you to a friend of mine named Brian Brogen. And Brian is a pretty cool cat, man. He's got all kind of stuff going on. He's actually the Vice President of Field Operations for Southeastern Construction down near Tampa. I'll let him tell us in a minute exactly where he's at. But he's down near the Tampa area, and he's also he's the host of his own podcast. You guys will want to check that out. But it's Build Your Success podcast, and I know he and I were just talking just yesterday, and he's just releasing his first book, and Brian's also actually a pilot, so I'm sure we'll get into that here in a minute. But he released a book called the 100-Hour Pilot. So if any of you out there curious about what it takes to be a pilot or trying to be a pilot, he's got that out there for you, and I'll let him tell us about that in a minute. So just to recap everyone real quick to understand, I'm doing a lot of interviews, 8, 9, 10, 11, somewhere around there, interviews between my first series this year was on personal transformation. Did 11-part series on my book, 10 Foundational Elements of Intentional Transformation. And then I wanted to put some interviews with all different types of leaders in different types of industries who've done different types of things relative to personal growth and transformation, leadership development. And then the last 30 weeks of this year, I'm going to talk about cultural transformation, and I'm going to do a 30-part series on my book, Blue Collar Leadership and Culture, the 5 components for building high-performance teams. So I'm thankful that Brian chose to get on here with us today and share some of his knowledge and wisdom. So welcome to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast, Brian.
Mack, it is so great to be here. I am humbled and excited to be on your podcast. You made that introduction, and 2 of those things you are solely responsible for. The podcast, you told me the how-to on that, and, within a few days I had a podcast up and running. And then you encouraged me that I could write a book. I barely graduated high school. I didn't have a whole lot of confidence in writing a book, and you told me just to sit down and start writing. You poured so much into me, man. I just appreciate you and Rhea. It's great to meet you guys. Just thanks for all you're doing for me.
Outstanding, man. It is a privilege. When you saying that is one thing that I want everybody to realize right here as we start talking, and they'll hear me on some of the other interviews too. But I remember the day you called me up and you had some questions, and people call me up all the time who want to do what I'm doing. They don't want to be who I am, but they want to do what I'm doing in their own way, and sometimes in a different way. And I'm always happy to help people. I always tell people that there's no competition. When you're a high-impact leader, there's no competition. I want you to go be successful. I want people who are listening to me to go to the Build Your Success podcast if you resonate with them and listen to you and learn from you. And it's just awesome, man. It's what you and I both believe in and teach us. It's living out of abundance, right?
Without a doubt. And I became aware of you through LinkedIn, and I started, messaging you and talk to you. And, initially you were like, man, I'm a busy guy, and I, don't know, because I asked to collaborate. And, you made the good point that you gotta promote your brand and keep that good. But the next thing I know, you said, hey, give me a call. And that call was very pivotal in my success. And I just appreciate you, man, and what you're doing for leadership in general across all these blue collar. That's my background, man. I came up as a worker in the construction industry, getting my hands dirty all the way up through now. I get to run this field operations here in Mulberry, Florida is where I'm from. You mentioned that earlier, near Tampa.
Yeah.
In Central Florida. We work in industrial construction. Man, it's hot. I've got these crow's feet around my eyes. So I've definitely, and I've got twin boys that have decided to follow me in the industry, and I tell them all the time, you got to earn your stripes, boys. It's not, you can't just walk into these positions. It's about earning respect. And of course, your books, after coming to know you, I decided to start a book study with one of your books that I had read. I've actually read 2 of your books now and got another one on my book list. But
hey, great.
We started with the Blue Collar Leadership Leading from the Front Lines, and I've got about 10 people from our team at Southeastern Construction in the book study. What I was sharing with you the other day is what I really enjoy about the book study. You know, we read a chapter, as you've alluded, it takes 6 to 7 minutes to read a chapter. We spend 6 to 7 minutes talking about it, and then we go into another chapter. We take 30 minutes a week and do this. We're actually about to, next week we're finishing, so we have chapter 29 and 30 of that book, Leading from the Front Lines. And what I really enjoy is the team recognizing each other as leaders and what their strengths are. So that's been great. Thank you for that book, Mack.
That's awesome, man. And, you know, I tell people all the time, and you know it because you've read the book and you're going through the book. I wrote that book you're talking about, Blue Collar Leadership Leading from the Front Lines. I literally wrote it for the person in the trenches, the frontline entry-level worker, no matter how old they are or how long they've been doing it, but the person who's in an entry-level position with no one reporting to them. That was my intended audience. But what's been cool about that book is, I mean, I've had CEOs read that book, you know, CEOs of big companies, and they get tremendous value out of it. And, you know, you're the vice president of field operations of a pretty good size construction company, and you're telling me, make sure I got it right, and you're using that book with leaders of other people, your leadership team, right? People who have other people reporting to them. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So that's our managers, our area managers that are responsible for several job sites and different crews across the state of Florida and throughout Georgia and Alabama, and guys that just want to help their team grow. And of course, we're doing as you suggest. We're encouraging them. Hey, you know, we get through this book study. You guys started on your own, and let's just let this thing grow and go throughout our company, and we can be transformed by it. I mean, it really can transform the way we do business if we take these things and put them to heart. You know, to your point about taking action, I'm glad that I've taken action on the things you've told me and taught me to do and coached me. And when I first started my consulting business for training and coaching, I had another guy tell me, said, Brian, the most disappointing thing that's going to happen is you're going to coach and train someone and they're not going to take action. And I've been doing this for a few years now, and I realize exactly what he's talking about. You know, you and I, you pour your heart into this. I'm trying to learn to do the same thing, and then somebody just doesn't change what they're doing. They don't make that transformation when it's before them. They can do it. They're capable, but they just choose that comfort zone. And one of our team members said, you know, I realized how uncomfortable I was in my comfort zone when I look back upon it. And I wrote down that quote. That's one of our managers. His name is Steve Miller, and just a great guy. And he came up with that. I said, man, that's really good. I'm writing that one down.
That's good stuff, man. I appreciate you sharing that, because it's really powerful. And just before I want to talk a little bit more about your book study, but you said something there that, you know, I want to communicate out to people, because, you know, when you first called me, like you talked about collaborating, and I don't want to collaborate. Nothing against you. I don't want to collaborate with anybody. Rhea and I, you know, built our business to do what we're doing together. And I always tell people, our character is our brand. Our product is our character, and that's why we're so tight about it. But I want to help people like you who are actually going to do it. Go do it, because the world needs more of us out there. And I probably told you, I don't really remember now, but I talked to you that the second time, and probably told you, you know, if you want some more, you're gonna have to pay for it, because most coaching I do is people have to pay, and I don't even do much of that, because I really don't want to do a whole lot of that. But, you know, I haven't been charging you for coaching and mentoring like I do several other people. And the people I coach and mentor the most are the people like you who actually get results. And if they keep earning, they kind of earn my time. That's what you've been doing. You've been earning my time, and that's one reason I'm happy to have you on here. I didn't even know we were going to talk about this piece, but it naturally comes up. But you keep earning my time, just like the other people, and I'm sure you can relate that's ROI for me. My time for you is the return on in my investment in you is you going out to get results.
Well, I tell everybody that'll listen to me, you know, my first interaction with you, what was the phone call, I bought a book, and you sent me 3 books, and so I've spent
Okay.
At that time, I'd spent $18 with you, and got 3 books out of the deal.
I don't even remember all that.
Oh yeah, and so then I was like, man, this guy's pretty cool. It's great, and now I've bought 25 books from you for my team. That's still not. I mean, it's minuscule to the time and effort you poured into me, and man, I want to return that favor. Anybody listening to the podcast, he's told you where to find me at on the Build Your Success podcast. I want to help others, and that's what Mack did. Mack told me, you need to have your own book. You need to have your own It wasn't about, well, you don't need to know how to do this because I want to control it. He said, go out. This is how you do it. He gave me the specific tools. Now, granted, he didn't go out there and do it for me. I mean, that's what people got to understand is that when he told me how to do it, it was upon myself to get out and make it happen. But, man, I'd have been so far behind and probably discouraged had I not had the tools that you shared with me on how to do things. And again, that's the book and the podcast, 2 things that, have been goals for me a long time, were able to come to fruition with your coaching and mentoring.
That's awesome, Brian. And since you seem to remember so well, you probably know how long ago that was when we first talked, about approximately. When did all this, I mean, you've done a lot in that amount of time is what I'm getting at. How long ago was that?
Well, I started my podcast in June of last year, and I'd say It was 2 months before that when I first contacted you, and then I bought your book and read your book, and then, the next phone call was, now, Brian, you need to start a podcast. I'm like, well, man, I don't know how to do that. And you said, well, here's how you do it.
How many episodes have you done so far?
I think it was on a Thursday, and by that Tuesday, I had a podcast up, man. So
You did?
I'm inspired by I tease about you being the Mack truck of inspiration. You take the excuses away. I mean, you really do. Hey, if you want to do it, this is how you do it. In your books, you do the same thing. You tell people that they're their own boss, and when they realize that, wow, it's just, I really believe I've been successful in construction because I push myself. I want to take the next level. I don't need my boss to tell me, hey, go do this, go find your own work. It's embedded in me. If we're going to succeed, I've got to push. And when you create I tell my team members that, you know what, you're going to create the work you're going to create. And so if you're disappointed in this other person excelling, it's because they're out there making it happen. And that's one of your slogans, make it happen or someone else will. And that's just a fact of life.
Yeah, man. You getting me fired up. I ain't going to be able to talk in a minute. I love it.
Well, I get you too fired up. We'll have a lesson here for about an hour like I love to do.
I know it. I might have to get you back on again when I get a chance. Definitely after the next series that I do, because I record them things, and get them recorded up, and then I pop them out. So I won't be long, and I'm going to be full for the rest of the year on my podcast. But tell me, how many episodes do you have on your podcast now so far?
So this morning we released episode 41.
Wow, man. From
I'm
0
doing
to
once
41.
a week. So. Yep, 0 to 41.
That's awesome. So I want to go back, even before I talk about the book study again, I still want to go back farther because, people who listen to me are probably like people who listen to your podcast. And hopefully, when I share mine, hopefully you'll get some new listeners, and you'll probably share the link, and I might get some new listeners. We'll allow both of us to pour into additional people. That's how it all works. Everybody wins. But, a lot of my stuff, and you've touched on it, a lot of my stuff is for the frontline entry-level people. But also, a lot of my stuff for what I call my blue-collar talk for folks like you, the big dogs, the VPs and the presidents and the owners and the CEOs. So just so people know who you are a little bit better, tell me, I know I saw on your LinkedIn a minute ago, you've been in this construction industry 25 years. You didn't start out at the VP spot, right?
No, sir. My first job in construction was making delivery tickets for fabricated steel. I was 17 years old. I graduated high school a little early, so I got to start at 17. And I gravitated towards the outside, loading the trucks, and then I became a fitter fabricator, fitting steel and welding steel. And I decided, I enjoy this so much that I want to go into the business and learn. And so I learned to do some welding, And then within a few years, they had me running a small crew, and in field operations, our employee numbers are 3,000. My employee number is 3,001 for our field operations. So that they gave me the responsibility early on, and we've grown it into what it is today, and just thankful for every opportunity we've been given. And you know, around 2001, I was the general contractor of my own house, and in 2002, I got my general contractor's license. So I'm a qualifying agent for the company. Somewhere a little time after that, I got my roofing license, and then I got what's called a NASCA license, which lets me be a general contractor in up to 8 states. And so now I'm licensed in Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. In 2015, I got my project management professional designation from PMI. And then, as you alluded to here recently, in 2017, I got my pilot's license. And after that, I became a John Maxwell coach, trainer, and speaker at 18. And so my wife says, Brian, what's next? And I said, I have no idea, but it will not be sitting around.
That's awesome, man. I mean, that's very inspirational. You packed a lot of years into a few minutes right there telling people your story. But what you did is what you and I both are trying to help other people do. Realize they can do that. They can become effective in life, and they can become successful. They just got to do the work, like you were talking about earlier with the podcast and the book. You got to do the work. So, knowing a little bit of your story, I want to jump back to you leading this book study with your leaders. Again, you're using a book that I wrote for entry-level people, but the key is I want everybody to know, and I want you to elaborate on it for me, what it means to you when I say this. But that book, everybody can get value out of it. I mean, you're leading a team of leaders, formal authority leaders who, blue-collar term is those are bosses, a bunch of bosses you're leading through this book study. But you got 2 things you're trying to do, I'm sure, from our talking before, is you want them to see this book for what it is, a development tool for their frontline entry-level people and everyone down below them in the org chart that reports to them, so they'll see the value of using it down below. But they couldn't just go through it looking at it like that, could they? Because they got too much out of it.
That's right. And Mack, we in the leadership arena know that over 80% of people stop reading after high school. After college, about a little over 80% also stop reading and don't read another book when they get out, when they graduate. So education basically stops for most human beings. And the book study, a lot of my team would not read a book if it wasn't for a book study. If we weren't all together and doing it together, they just wouldn't take the time to do it. Your book, the one we're using, like you said, is frontline, the workers. But the things it talks about, character and trust and showing up and doing the right thing, are just a message we all need to remind ourselves of, and not only remind ourselves of, but take responsibility for. We are responsible for our own actions, and we can't communicate that enough to our craft. The craftsmen in our field, these welders, these concrete guys, man, they are really good at trades. They know what they're doing. But to learn these soft skills, and I've heard the argument that they shouldn't even be called soft skills, they should be called foundational skills.
Yeah.
To learn to speak to each other correctly, to learn not to have an agenda, to trust each other, to build trust with each other, those things are missing in our society. And if we can help encourage that through a book study, take 30 minutes is what we're doing, 15 weeks, you're going to be better because of it. I just listened to your podcast where you interviewed the gentleman that owned the business, and he's talking about the transformation his team made, which is a much larger team. He's given raises because of it. I mean, think about that. Think about helping your team become more valuable. I mean, those are just awesome things that people don't understand that a 100-page book can do for your team.
Yeah, you're talking about Tim McGorty out in Boise, Idaho, and Seattle. He talked about in that interview that I think that was around episode 169 or 70. I can't really remember now. I get tangled up in all these episodes, but that's the one where he's talking about he gave people raises because of they become so much more productive, but they got raises and still the company's doing better. There's still more profit even after the raises because everyone's bought into it. That's what you're talking about, that story he shared, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, I couldn't remember his name, but it's Tim. You're correct.
Yep, and if anybody out there has read Blue Collar Leadership and Culture, the book I'll be doing a series on later this year, I actually mentioned Tim in there when I met Tim and his reaction and what he did and that kind of stuff. But I actually had him on to do an interview with him not too long ago. So if you listen and you want to go back and find that episode, not too far back, a couple of weeks back from this one. But I saw a picture one time, man, you posted on LinkedIn. It just got me fired up. And it was a picture, you remember it probably when I say it, but it was a picture of you in your work truck, probably on a job site somewhere, and you posted something. You tagged me, which is why I saw it. Something about you were people making excuses about they can't do a book study or you doing one in the truck. Tell me about that whole, whatever it is I'm talking about, that picture, that scene.
Exactly. So, even myself, it's like, man, I can't make the call today because I'm going to be here or there or wherever. And then it's like, no, I've got to set the example. I've got to lead by example. So I got to take the time, pull over, and do this. And I was actually at the Port of Tampa over on the water there at a fuel facility that we work for doing piping. And I sat there on the phone as I am with you right now doing the book study with the team and thought of that. Like, I had an excuse, but I overcame it. So sometimes we give ourselves excuses. And I said, I'm going to make that book study today. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, without a doubt. But you can make it happen if you choose to.
Yeah, we either going to find a way or find an excuse, one of the two, right?
That's right, man. That's it.
And so it sounds like you guys are doing your book studies over the phone. There's all kind of ways to do it. That's another excuse people have is we can't get everybody together, so we can't do one. But it sounds like you figured out a way to do it where you don't have to be in the same room.
And that's correct. And what one of the team members suggested was we're using 1-800-FREE-CONFERENCE, and we record it. And so they've offered to their general foremans, and anybody that wants to listen to it, go listen to what we're saying during these book studies. Go listen to us read the book, and go listen. So we save it in a shared file, and anybody that wants to listen to it can listen to it. But yeah, definitely remotely. If someone's in the office, we meet in the conference room, and the others call in that are at the job sites. Again, stop making excuses. Start making it happen.
I love it, man. That's outstanding. So, Tim, on the interview you were talking about a minute ago that I'd done previously with a business owner who owns a masonry company and a precast concrete company, he talked about, it was funny to hear him talk about these, crusty old bricklayers. But I know, and I know there's a lot of the blue collar workforce in general, especially the frontline folks, and even a lot of them who have come up through the ranks, just like you were on the front line, you come up through the ranks. A lot of those leaders you're leading through book studies probably come up through the ranks, but we've got everybody talks about soft skills, but we've got a hard shell. The blue collar folks, they've got a hard shell to crack to get them to get engaged with this. What do you think?
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And when I first started 25 years ago, as you alluded to, it's almost 26 years now, they have these things. I tore him up they bragged about it. I tore him up one side and down the other. They told us, we hired you from the shoulders down. Those are some of the stupidest things we ever said. And I'm guilty of saying it. If you really need someone from the shoulders down, you need people to think. You need people to be smart. In this day and age where we're 100% safe and we don't want to have any incidents, any injuries, that person digging that ditch better be thinking. And as a result of some of this leadership stuff, I've gotten into the ACE Mentor program. And I tell parents, when I was in high school, I was a troubled teenager, very defiant, skipped school, did a lot of things I shouldn't have done. And they threatened me with you're going to dig ditches the rest of your life. I begged parents, threaten your student with digging ditches, because now it pays over $20 an hour and we do it with heavy equipment. You can become a skilled operator.
Hey, teach and share some of that right there since you hit on that. I was going to ask you a little bit later, but it fits right now. Get into who you guys are and what you do. And I mean, you may be looking, or some of those leaders who are on your team may be looking for some I'm sure you're looking for high character folks, not a bunch of folks who can't lead themselves well. But talk about some of that for the audience who maybe is not in the construction industry, to talk about some of the, what's possible in the construction industry and what you guys do and that sort of thing, and maybe some of the pay ranges in different jobs.
That's what I love to tell people, Mack, is I was looking for a job, and I found a very rewarding career. As a result of my career, I've made all those credentials that we talked about in my resume. I've become involved in trade associations. I'm a director for a regional construction council. We meet 3 times a year with over 100 companies, and I'm part of the board of that. And as a result of that, I got involved with mentoring students. But people don't understand, you can become an executive, you can become a very skilled welder and make over $100,000 an hour. So there are things in the construction industry that you can do without a diploma. I like to tell parents, you earn while you learn, instead of getting in this student loan debt. The construction industry it's very demanding, man. You do, especially here in Florida in the Southeast, it's going to be in the hot sun. I mean, we don't build buildings in the cool environments. But the reward is, man, you can look back and see our team built this building that's going to stand here for years to come. It's just extremely rewarding career. There's finance in construction. There's law in construction. There's all these different parts and pieces to construction that a lot of people don't understand, and the trade and the skilled person has been looked down upon in the past. There's a lot of people that are promoting, hey, our skilled workforce, and you're one of the champions of it, need to be considered craftsmen. They need to be considered the cream of the crop. I mean, these people out here make things happen for our society, man. And so don't look down on construction trades. Don't look down on maintenance and machinists and these people that do these labor-intensive jobs, but require a lot of math, a lot of science. That's just where we need to make sure people understand these crusty guys aren't stupid. They have a crusty shell. And you know what? I used to say, don't wear your emotions on your shoulder. That's another dumb thing. That crusty guy's got emotions like every one of us do, man. He cares about people. He's got a different way of presenting it. But in the construction industry, we care about each other, man. We're part of a team. And as you said, you don't have competitors in the team building and in the leadership business. I don't have competitors in the construction business. I work around a lot of people I respect. Yes, we have to compete with them on bids, but we work together to make the industry better. And that's just you could get me talking all day about the love of the construction industry.
That's good stuff. I gotta get you to correct something though, because I know what your team's gonna do. They're gonna be looking for a raise, because you said a minute ago that they can make $100,000 an hour in doing welding. You didn't mean an hour, did you?
I meant a year. Yes, I apologize.
Okay, because I know them guys, man. They're gonna be hunting you down.
Yeah, that's right. They're gonna want that job. Where's that job at?
Yeah, I know. So tell me something that these my passion. I love the blue collar workforce. I love the blue collar workforce. Those who lead them, those who support them, because most of the ones who lead them and support them were them at one time, and a lot of times those people haven't had development. So another return on investment for me is you leading that book study with those guys, introducing them to more and more stuff. And I know you probably do other stuff with them that don't have anything to do with me, but what's some comments that you can share that you've heard from them, or something that they've done different, you as their leader? What's some real results you've seen from those book studies where they actually applied the principle? Because that's the ultimate win, is getting results somehow from applying the principles.
So, as we talked about earlier, we're 14 weeks in, so I'm looking forward to some great results. The main thing, as I alluded to earlier, is the recognition of each other, talking about how they're doing things, and just the camaraderie where they're getting together and having conversations about how they can do things better. It's going to lead to some really improved processes, and it's going to again, I think it's a transformation. I don't expect anything less than some really good results from having this book study, and the way they are caring for each other and giving accolades to each other is very important to me, and I just greatly appreciate that part of it.
So you're talking about relationship building, but elaborate on it a little bit, because a lot of people don't understand. They think a book study means, we go study the book and we learn what's in the book. But you were talking about camaraderie and people, the discussion they have. And the discussion they have, a lot of times that discussion has got nothing to do with the book. The book just provokes some type of thought about either something at home or something at work, but it's literally not about the book. Is that what you're talking about? It's thought-provoking and leads to a discussion that they may have never had otherwise?
Exactly. It opens doors while you're having the book study, and you set aside the time to have thought. We are gung-ho folks in the construction industry and the blue-collar industry. It's about making results. It's about producing a product. But we don't typically slow down for thought. And when you do this book study, it forces you to slow down for thought and that communication that sometimes go missing, and they respect it and appreciate it and come away with a better morale. That's probably the best thing is they come away with a better morale, knowing you set some time aside to think about and invest in them.
Yeah, and what does you as their leader setting time aside? Does that convey to them it's important or not? You just got plenty of time to set aside for whatever you want, or you busy most of the time doing other stuff?
Well, I try to keep myself very busy, as you know, and I know you're in the same boat. But yeah, definitely, it's going to take that. You can't say you guys have a book study. You can't say, here's the book, have fun. You got to lead by example, man. This morning was one of our book studies. I kicked it off with reading a chapter. It's been a few weeks since I've read a chapter. I was like, guys, it's my turn to read a chapter. I'm going to read this chapter.
Okay. So y'all take turns reading a chapter over the phone, then y'all discuss it.
That's right. Exactly right.
Okay. All right. So I want to make sure I get this in. We still got 10 or 15 minutes potentially, but I want to know how you get to be a pilot and write a book about being a pilot, man. Tell me about that story and who that's for, because who knows who's listening. Someone out there maybe they want to be a pilot, or maybe they're just curious what that even means. How do you even become a pilot?
Well, the bigger story is fulfilling a lifelong dream. Everybody has a lifelong dream. Everybody has something they aspire to do that they're either making excuses for or making happen. And so I, as a 9-year-old little boy, the first time I remember is probably earlier than that. I remember being outside and seeing an acrobatic plane flying. I ran inside in extreme excitement to my parents and said, "Hey, come out here and see this." And from then on, it was going into Civil Air Patrol. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. Of course, I'm only 5'6", so that probably was out of the question anyway. But then I went through some struggling times in my teenage years with my parents, and they got a divorce, and it just kind of, broke me, and I was mad at the world. And I went to 5 different high schools, so that's part of my problem with school was there was no nothing solid there.
Yeah.
And so after graduating high school, I gave up on those plans. I didn't have the grades to go to the Air Force, and I had to get a job. I had to go to work. So, that's the rest of the story. Southeastern prepared me financially to fulfill this lifelong dream of becoming a pilot. Again, it's something else you got to dig in there. If you pick up the book, man, there's some times of disappointments. I actually had to take my check ride twice. So I failed the first check ride, wound up passing my second check ride. A lot of lessons learned. Again, it is a piloting book and about piloting, and it was written for aspiring pilots, for student pilots, and for pilots that want to reminisce about their training. But anybody that's got a lifelong goal can pick it up and get some real gold nuggets out of how to just persevere and make something happen.
What's the name of it?
It's the 100-Hour Pilot, and you can find it on Amazon, just searching by 100-Hour Pilot or my name, Brian Brogen.
How you spell your name, Brian?
It's Brian Brogen, Brogen.
There you go. And so, what's the significance in that title of 100 hour? What's that? Does it take you 100 hours, or what does that mean?
No, sir.
What made you pick 100 hour pilot?
Yeah, I picked that because that's where when I began the book, I was right around 100 hours of flight time. So pilots have to keep a log book of how many hours they've flown. Most of them are doing it to get to a certain amount of hours to prove they can fly for the airlines. That's not my ambition. I'm just a what we call a general aviation pilot. I want to fly for myself and potentially fly to business destinations on my own. But the log book where I'm at is 100 hours. It took me right around 60 hours to get my pilot's license. So my first 60 were training. The back 40, probably 45 to 48 now, has been just sheer pleasure, fun flying.
Okay. And I read the book, and I almost didn't read it. And you probably thought I wasn't going to read it because I don't read much of anything except leadership books because that's just what I'm busy, and that's where I want to put my time. But you inspired me to read it just because of you were getting a return on investment, providing that return on investment to me. And so you sent it, and I actually did read it. I enjoyed reading it. I thought it was really great. And even though it's not a leadership book, I've always thought about, what somebody has to do. What do you really have to do to be a pilot? I used to probably think you had to have a plane first, but you don't even have to have a plane. You still ain't got a plane, do you?
No, sir. I'm a renter, so I rent planes from airports. You get checked out, and it's not. Initially, I thought it was like renting a car, but of course, it takes a little more than renting a car. So you got to get checked out each time you go to a different airport. So I'm checked out at a couple airports now and can fly a few planes that I rent.
Okay.
It's just one of those things, man. I've always wanted to do, and finally got it done. And you encouraged me. Here's how that went. You said, Brian, you need to write a leadership book. I said, man, I want to write a leadership book, but the first thing in my mind is this 100-hour pilot book. And so I wrote the book, and I sent it to my mentor here, Mack, and he says, it's not a leadership book. I'm not going to read that. I went, oh, man. And about 3 hours later, he says, I can't put this book down. So I was greatly appreciative that you did take the time to read it because, again, there wouldn't be a book without a Mack story. So, man, thanks for pouring into me and helping me. And now there will be a leadership book. That's step 2 now. I got to write the leadership book.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it was interesting. I mean, I learned from John Mackel's. When I first went to one of John Mackel's events, I got certified to teach John stuff, like you did. And I did that in 2012, but in August of 2012. But in June of 2012, that's where I actually found out about, the John Maxwell training and stuff. I wasn't planning to go. I didn't even know nothing about that. He did a thing called A Day About Books where he taught an 8-hour session on how to actually write books, how he writes books. That's how I got introduced to John, in person, in a room with John. And I remember, I'll never forget it from that day. He says, the way you tell a good book or the way you write a good book is the person reading it's got to want to turn the page. When they get finished with one page, you got to want to turn the page. You ain't never going to get to the next one. And I was interested in your book, and it made me want to turn the page. So I think you did well on that. And that's what I try to do with my books. I try to write them in a way that it makes the person want to turn the page. And I'm going to tell you one thing about my little books in 30 chapters, 3-page per chapter books. One thing that makes people want to turn the page is they know they ain't got but 2 more to go at the most. So that gets people through it. But I want to ask you, a question. Just since I got you here, I don't think I've ever asked you. I don't think it was in the book. Maybe there's a reason it wasn't, but I hope you can share it. But I know it depends on the number of hours that, how much you struggle to get past some things. But for the audience listening, if they are curious, just like I'm curious at the moment, what kind of money does it take to get your pilot license? What's a range of like right now, if Mack Story decided I wanted to go be a pilot, what's kind of a range that it would cost me, somewhere in between what and what kind of thing?
So if you were able to do it in the 40-hour that the FAA requires, you have to have 40 hours of training. It's somewhere around $7,500. Studies show it takes 60
total?
to 80 hours. Yep, that's right.
Wow, that's much less than I thought. That's not a little. Yeah. That's still a lot of money, but I thought That I thought it'd be more than that.
But studies show it takes 60 to 80 hours, which I fall in that bracket. And so that's $12,000 to $15,000, $18,000. So I mean, it's a steep investment. Something you got to save money for. And I'm a Dave Ramsey debt-free guy, so I try not to go in debt, especially not for something like that. But I did it. I got it done, man, and I'm enjoying being a pilot. It's one of those things. Hey, I don't golf. I don't do a lot of other things that cost a lot of money. So that's where I've put my money.
Yeah, some people say, "Well, that costs a lot of money, $7,500." But some of them same people got a $7,500 4-wheeler sitting out there that they can't they go drag it through the mud every other weekend, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And it's hooked to a $40,000 truck, or on the back of a $40,000 truck. And they got like a $40,000 boat hooked to the back. You know, it's what we value out of life, right? But before we wrap up, I don't know. Hopefully, I bet you, because you are a pilot and you wrote that book and you're a leadership student like me, I'm sure you'll be a lifetime leadership student just like me. But tell me 2 or 3 lessons, you know, that relate to flying and leadership that go together, because you probably could take that little book and turn it into a leadership book. You just have to elaborate on the leadership components to the story. You can spin off of that. Tell me some things.
Without a doubt. But I do want to back up. You started to talk about your book and the way you wrote it in those 3 chapters. I want to let your listeners know, and everybody that's listening, you wrote the book for blue-collar people without a doubt. And you put it in a size that fits blue-collar people, that can take it in small bites. And kudos for doing that. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
I know you was talking about, the 3 chapters, and you turn the page to get the 3 chapters, and that's what your book does. So definitely remember that when you're working with a blue-collar team. It's small bites, and they can take it and absorb it, and then wait till next week to get a little more. So, but
well, thank you, man.
To your point about absolutely. The lessons, man, there's so many parallels, but I'll start with a flight plan. So if I'm going to fly a cross-country flight, I've got to set up where I'm flying. I've got to know how many miles that is, and I've got to calculate my fuel usage, and then consider the wind, crosswind, tailwind, headwind, all those things. And this is the part I love. I have to have checkpoints. And with the checkpoints, it's something I can see from the air and recognize to know that I'm on course.
Yeah.
And man, and I've already used this in leadership training, Mack. The checkpoints are key. I'm not just going to say I'm flying from here. Let's say I'm going to Atlanta, Georgia to see my buddy Mack. If I made that flight today, I know the terrain in Florida, and I know some of the power plants that I use because I work in them, that I use for checkpoints. When I head to Atlanta, Georgia, I don't know that territory as well. So I have to pick out some checkpoints and know I'm on course. The wind of life blows us off course, and we don't even know it because we don't have a checkpoint. Yeah. And we need to make sure when we set these big, lofty goals that there's milestones and there's checkpoints to making it happen. So you can check in, if you're working on something that takes a year to do, you're checking in on it once a month to see where you're at and how you're doing.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And what you're talking about there is principles. The principles to be an effective pilot are the same principles to be an effective leader of yourself or others, right?
That's right.
It looks different, but the principle is exactly the same. It's just you just wrap it in something different, and that's pretty key. So I got a few more minutes. Do you have one more pilot-related, flying-related principle that also applies into your personal life or professional life?
Being responsible for others. So if you read that chapter about passengers, and I talk about if you have to call in an emergency to the FAA to the control tower, they're going to ask you how many souls aboard, and that is I haven't had that question yet, but that has got to be a very sobering question. How many souls?
You don't want that
aboard?
Question.
No, sir.
You don't want it, but you want to be ready for it, but you don't want it.
But I want to be ready for it. And if we think about life, how many people can we impact? How many people can we help in life? it's just dumbfounding. You helped me start a podcast. You helped me author a book. There's a new podcast out, Real Transcendence Podcast. A friend of mine that I've known for several years said, man, how do you do this? I told him, similar to the way me and you did it. I said, this is how you do it. In a few weeks, he's got a podcast. I'm grateful for that. I love it. I've been listening to his podcast. So it's just how many people can we help in life is amazing if we get started now.
Wow, that's awesome. And that's actually a great note to end on, that wisdom by you, Brian. So thank you for being here. How does people reach out to you? How do they connect with you, follow you? Any of that stuff you want to share right quick?
Hey, I'm on LinkedIn, and we spelled my name earlier, Brian Brogen. And if you want to email me, you can email me at brianb@buildcs.net. That's also my website, www.buildcs.net. Again, the book is on Amazon. If you're interested in aviation, please pick up that book. Or if you want to learn how to achieve a lifelong goal, it's all in there. And, hey, I'm going to do what Mack Story taught me. My phone number is 863-800-9658. Pick up the phone and call me.
I love it, man. Some people say, why you share your phone number? It's because I want somebody to call me. That's why.
That's it, man.
and to end on that note, I got a guy who just released his podcast. It's coming out. Yours, actually, we're recording it today on March 24th, but this podcast is actually going to come out on May the 1st. But there's one that'll be come out the week before on April 24th. It is from George Estioko. And he only called me a couple of weeks ago. And he's a frontline entry-level guy, Brian, and he's listened to all my podcasts, all my audio books. But he's frontline in the oil fields in California. And, you know, if someone's listening to this now, they can go back to the last episode before this and listen to it. But that young man, he's 31, and he's doing what I try to teach anybody to do, but he's a frontline guy, and he's trying to lead up. He's starting book studies. He's got the leaders up above him getting into this stuff. He's getting all of his teammates and coworkers listening to podcasts. But it's cool because he heard me say, call me. I mean, and he actually called me. I said, hardly anybody ever does it, George. I said, but you did it, and it's pretty cool. I just recorded his episode yesterday. So thank you very much, Brian, for being on the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today.
Man, it was great to be here. You got the same story with Jason, same story with me. You're impacting a lot of people, Mack. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So I hope everyone enjoyed today's podcast. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mack Story's Blue Collar Leadership Series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mack's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.